สวัสดีครับ Welcome to the Directive Briefing. My name is Kulawet Jainpana with the CEO of Thai IoT. Today we have a great pleasure to talk about something that is a challenge. The topic is called What Your Board Needs to Know About C-Suite Succession in Time of Uncertainty. Before that, I would like to inform that during the operation, you all will be muted. But if you want to ask question, please ask a question by go to chat and send your question to all panelists for Q&A at the end of these activities. So today we have a guest speaker from DDI, and thanks to DDI for your kindness. Dr. Matt Paese, Senior Vice President, Practice Leader, and สวัสดีครับ Hello, good morning, คุณ Matthew.
Morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Great. We are going to be talking about succession planning in the uncertainty and what the board has to know. We had a good discussion before this, right? And I learned succession planning is not about replacing. And because organization is a living ecosystem, that when you change something, the rest has to be to adjust also. So please share your wisdom about succession planning in uncertainty time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and any wisdom that I'm able to share, I think, will come from people like yourself and our clients and others who are continually teaching us lessons about what it means to prepare an organization for changing times, for being ready to lead when circumstances are good and when they're bad and when they're changing or they're not changing. During all those situations, I think your point about ecosystem is a very good one, because it is a way to think about succession that I believe is a very healthy one. Succession is not a moment in time. It's not a decision. It is a process that is ongoing, and in the best organizations is always ongoing. So thank you for that excellent introduction, and I think you teed it up very well. We did have a very good conversation in preparation for this that helped me to frame some of my remarks, which I hope will be maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20, and then I'm interested in others' input. And Kun Kolvik, I know you'll have some thoughts and you'll have some reflections, so I hope you'll join me, and I hope the participants and attendees today will join us as well, and we'll have a good dialogue. So does that sound okay? Okay, terrific. I am going to do the magical thing where I try to share my screen now, and I believe I'll do that, and hopefully you will see my slides. Are you seeing them? Yes? Okay. Okay, terrific. So I'd like to start by having you think about a question. Or perhaps organizations you're leading, and you think about your executive team, your C-suite. How many of those leaders do you expect to need to be replaced in the coming years? 1, 2, 3 years. If you have 10 executives, is it 1 leader? Is it 2 leaders? Is it 4? What I can tell you is that when we ask this question of people around the world, what we're finding, number one, is that the number of leaders that are likely to change in the C-suite in the next 2 to 3 years is increasing. Why is that? Partly because when there is a lot of change in the environment, like COVID, like business change, it causes executives to, it causes their jobs to change, and it causes the fit between individuals and their jobs to shift, so that they often will look for places where they can be more effective, or they may be asked to join an organization that they're not in now because someone recognizes that they have skill. So there tends to be something we call churn, turnover, change, movement. We see a lot more churn in the C-suite during and particularly after crisis. So we are expecting to see a lot of change and are starting to see a lot of change right now. So a question to think about is how much change you're expecting in your organization. And I'll leave you with one statistic before we move on. We just are finishing up a large research study, more than 2,000 organizations worldwide, more than 15,000 respondents. And we asked people, what is the rate of success when you make a succession decision in the C-suite? How often do leaders succeed and fail? And the result we got was quite stunning. 47% of the time, the new executive is regarded as a failure within 18 months of having been placed into their job. 47% of the time, a new executive is seen as not succeeding within 18 months on the new job. That is a stunning statistic. Sadly, it's not a new one. There have been statistics like this that have been around, and ours most recently is a new one. But if you have 10 people on your executive team, and in the next 2 years, you expect 4 of them to leave, you can expect 2 of them to fail. That's what the statistics would say. And what we want to talk about today is what can you do to prevent those failures? Even to prevent one of them is an enormous risk management effort for any organization. So that's what I'd like to talk about. And again, maybe 15 minutes at the most of comments, and then we'll get into some dialogue about it. Okay, moving on. All right. When you think about succession, the purpose of a succession system is to create stability. When a job opens, someone is ready to fill it. But here's what we hear people say all the time. Is anyone ever totally ready? Think of yourself, the last big job you had. When you first got that job, were you totally ready for it? Or did some things surprise you? If you went back to do it again, would you do some things differently? Most people would say yes. And that means no one can ever be totally ready. So as a board member, if your job is to manage the risk associated with changes in leadership, to reduce that risk, that means it's not enough to just be thinking about replacing people. Like Kun Kovac said right at the beginning, it's not enough to just think about replacing. The point that this slide makes, which I'm sure people can look at, is that it is because leaders can never be totally ready. No one will ever be ready. There's always some uncertainty. That means every succession decision has risk. How do we manage that risk? We manage that risk by preparing. Always be preparing. Even if the job is not open right now, even if we don't know when the job will be open. That means giving people new experiences. That means creating learning, creating assessment opportunities so that people can develop self-insight. That's what we mean by growth and preparation. And in our view and in our experience, the organizations that do this the best, that have the most steady leadership teams, are the ones that are always preparing the people below the C-suite, giving them new experiences, giving them learning experiences. So very quickly, I'm going to hit a few big points about what your succession system should do. And because Kun Kulvik, tell me what you think of this. I think perhaps because my internet had trouble, maybe we should start the questions after I talk about this slide.
No problem.
So tell me what you think. Okay, so in the most basic sense, what we want to do is make sure that these 6 things are part of every system. The six quick things: more than decision making. Succession is not just about replacement. That's a point we already made. Assessing leaders in your context. When we think about people below the C-suite, the question is, what is our culture? What is our situation? What's unique about our environment? We need to assess for capability in our environment. But then third, also think about the fact that we're building a team, not just individuals, not just one job. What are the total skills on the team, and how do those skills compare to the fourth point, our future? Not only where are we now in terms of our business, where are we going? What are we trying to create? What are we trying to change? What markets are we trying to get into? And what does that mean from a leadership standpoint? What we have to do then is the fifth one, which is not only build processes or charts where we look at the org chart and decide who will take which job, or decision processes. We have to build experiences for leaders so that they learn to do things they have not been asked to do before, like risk management, like managing profit and loss, like leading a big change, like working internationally, etc. These are assignments that can create less risk if they have to take on a bigger assignment. So we want to create experiences for people so that we can do the sixth thing, which is to always be preparing for the fact that leaders are going to face things that they do not expect. So these, Kun Kulvik, when you and I were talking, one of the things that we, I think, came upon together was that we wanted to start this dialogue by discussing the fact that succession is not always what we think it is. And I wonder what our participants might be thinking now, or what questions they might have about some of these things, or perhaps if you have made any observations based on what I've said so far.
Thank you very much. Last time we talked, I realized that succession planning is 24/7. It's not a transaction. And it's like raising kids and understand the future that they have to cope with. But right now, the uncertainty like COVID, like the disruption is out there. So how do we as the director understand what is the best combination of skill and the best fit of personality, leadership, and people, but we don't know about the future?
When you say we don't know about the future, say more. What do you mean?
There are more than one futures.
Yes.
COVID could that could be like work from home for another 3 years,
Right.
and the digitalization of the whole world is changing. 5G is coming. It's going to change the way we work and live. All these things.
Right. So that's a wonderful question. The point is a very interesting one. How do we create a strategy when we're in uncertainty? And I would say that your strategy for leaders is no different from your strategy for your business. When do we ever know the future in business? Never. And we always have to plan for the unexpected. And the way you create a good strategy is to find the things that you can, where the risks are, and reduce them. With people, there is risk when A, we don't know about their capabilities, or when we think we know because we had a meeting with them, or we went to dinner with them, or we saw them in one presentation, and so we make conclusions based on that. That's risky. But the other thing is there's one part that's assessing people. The other part is assessing how people will need to operate in our context. So for example, some businesses, take technology business, very fast paced, a lot of change, a lot of innovation, a lot of movement, a lot of people are accustomed to being uncertain, and that's okay because everything changes so fast. Compare that to a utility, um, perhaps electricity, water, nuclear. These are things that are much more stable. They're often associated with safety concerns. Human lives can be at risk, or perhaps things like being able to turn the water off and on, or turn the lights off and on. These things create more stability, less movement, less change. These contexts are very different, and the cultures that we have are very different. But now, let's take a utility, perhaps an energy company that is trying to move from traditional, perhaps fossil fuel based energies to renewable energies. Now you have a stable company that's trying to become a more a more opportunistic entrepreneurial company. Now we have to take a look at our people and think, are the people who have been leading our company for a long time the same people, or do they have the right skills to lead in an environment that we're trying to change? Now we don't know what the future is going to bring. We can't be sure, but the best thing we can do is try to assess both of those things as best we can. Assess people, assess context, and make our best predictions by reducing as much risk as we can. What do you think of that? And what other thoughts do you have?
Yeah, Matt, when you mentioned that is I think of the word transformation, which is a big word right now, and for the
Yes.
company. So, and succession planning. Is succession planning a part of transformation, or transformation is a part of succession planning? It's like a chicken and egg, right?
Which way does it go? Very, very good question. I think it has to be both ways, right? It has to be
Yeah,
both, not one or the other. Succession can accelerate transformation if we
yeah.
rethink how we prepare people, which people we promote and put in leadership positions, and how we manage their performance once they are in position. Yes?
Okay. Matt, coming to your point, which is very important, that 48% of the succession planning was not successful. Is that right?
Yes, and that includes leaders who are hired from the outside as well as those that are promoted from within. So
Okay.
half the time executives fail is what we find.
Okay. Um, when you say fail, how do you measure that they
Yes.
quit the job, or they what do you mean by that?
That's asking someone who is in their management position to say, do you feel as though they were successful? So they probably didn't get fired. They probably they many times probably stayed in their job. But it was a more general evaluation. Do you think this person after 18 months succeeded in this job? So it's more of a general evaluation rather than getting fired, changing jobs, turning over, that sort of thing.
Okay, I that's an interesting remark, because when executive got high or they got promoted and they are not doing well, and they feel that they're not doing well, sometimes they kind of blame themselves and think that it's their
Yes.
fault. But
Yes.
they, when you say that, it is almost like there is a higher level when they make decision to to promote this person or that person. The higher level, which including the board of directors and the C-suite, has to understand deep enough about that person and the organization, right?
Yes.
Especially board of directors, because board of directors, uh, uh, they are not in the organization. They are, and many of them independent directors, they are not there all the time. How
Yes.
could you, what does the board of directors have to know in order to understand how to do succession planning successful?
Four things. Four things. For every candidate, they should know their experience. They should know their industry knowledge. They should know their leadership competencies. Those are skills. And they should know some things about their personality. And why is that? Because personality is something that's part of who we are, and it's not easy for us to change it, and probably it's not a good idea for us to try. We are all unique and we are all magic in our own ways, and we should learn how to make that work, make that effective. But also, all of us can make mistakes because of our personalities, because we tend to do things in certain ways. So what a board of directors should know, not for every single person, but for every critical position, and that's the CEO, and that's probably every C-suite position. And then below the C-suite, there might be other critical positions. But for those jobs, the board should see a profile of each person that includes data, objective data, not just someone's opinion, not one person generated it, but objective data with some professional insight that allows a board of directors to say, how does this person and this group compare to other leaders, to other organizations, to benchmarks? How does this group or this individual stack up, and how do we evaluate our level of risk? Do we have a person who, let's take an example. Um, Very commonly, what we know about people is the first two things I mentioned, their experience and their knowledge. And we tend to know that because we see the jobs they've had, we see the successes that they've had, they often have a reputation, and it's easy to know what they know and where they've been. What's harder to know is their skills, because we've never watched them. We haven't been able to see them do it. And one thing that we think is absolutely essential is to do a very careful assessment of someone's skills, not that they've executed in the past, but the skills that will apply to the future. So what we often do at DDI is actually put people through leadership simulations that are one or two or three levels beyond where they are now in their career, so that almost like if you're an astronaut, if you're someone who's going to go out into space, before you ever go into space, we're going to put you into a machine that simulates a rocket, and we're going to give you all the challenges that you have to face, and you're going to go through the simulation, and we're going to produce data for you that says, here's what happened. And then you're going to say, oh, I see what happened, and I see what I could do differently, and I know why I made those mistakes. And because it's a future focused simulation, everyone makes mistakes, and it's okay to make, it's safe to make mistakes. It's not a performance evaluation, it's a simulation. And if we can compare how someone performed in a simulation with someone's personality, now we have some things that can help us understand how we might build on their knowledge and experience, all the great things they've done so far. We have a way to think about how to manage the risk associated with what they might do next. And sometimes that's as simple as I'll just use myself as an example. If I am very passionate and I get very excited and I get very energetic about my ideas, I might present them too strongly. But I might learn that in a simulation. I can work on that and I can practice before I ever get a big job when I have to perhaps negotiate an acquisition or I have to try to influence a customer to change a major contract with our organization that may cost millions. And so if I learn a few things about how I can be more executive in the way I influence, suddenly my company's risk has gone down if I'm placed into a critical role. What do you think about that?
But can we take the slide down because it sounds like it's a little bit in the way, so that
Okay.
y'all can see your face.
Thank you,
Okay,
Teresa.
great. Much
There we
better.
go. That's better.
Yeah. Okay. You said that the board has to know the person, their skill, their personality. What about the organization itself and where it's going? Because the board has to understand both, right? The
Yes.
person and the
Yes.
environment, the
Yes.
organization. Please talk about that too.
Thank you. Thank you. You ask such wonderful questions every time we talk, and I think maybe sometimes you should be doing the presenting. But it's helpful when we talk because we come to such important points. We've talked about assessing the person. Let's talk about assessing the context. When we do these assessments, we have something that we call business drivers. Business drivers are the priorities, the leadership priorities that an organization must focus on if they are to execute their strategy. Okay, so technology company trying to innovate. That's one world. A manufacturing company trying to control cost. Communications company trying to connect to their customers. A pharmaceutical company trying to enter new markets. Okay, you think of industries and strategies and how they come together. We have a process where we connect with board members, the CEO, senior team members, customers, and we learn about what everyone now they all know about the business strategy. They know about the culture strategy. What we ask them about is what will leaders have to do to make the changes that are necessary to execute that. And then we reduce those themes to no more than 3 or 4 business drivers. And we call them business drivers because it's the leadership that drives the business forward. And every organization has a unique set of business drivers. And if you can identify your business drivers, then you can create a match between people and those drivers and say, what are the skills that are necessary, the personalities that are necessary for these drivers? And in the scientific work that we do, we create connections. We actually, in each driver, we create the competencies and the personality characteristics that are necessary to execute those drivers. So we can take a look. So one driver, I'll give an example. One driver is to, for example, create a high performance culture. That is, we have a good company, we have good people, but perhaps we could raise the bar. We could be faster, have higher standards, get better results. So we want to know who is a leader who can create a high performance culture. This will be a leader who's a good coach. This will be a leader who has a sense of urgency. This will be a leader who has a clear sense of strategy. Okay, those are skills. I can measure those skills. But this also is a leader who has execution skills, who is able to have now personality, a sense of speed, a sense of ambition, a sense of pushing. So these are more characteristics of the person, not so much skills. We can put all these together and for one person say, how ready is she or he to create a high performance culture? Probably if she needs some development, we can put a plan together and help her get ready. Or if there's a job where build high performance culture is urgent and we say, who's ready right now? Maybe we say she's not ready right now, somebody else right now, but maybe her next time if we help her get ready. And that's the ecosystem planning. So we know that she's not ready for that now, but in 2 years, 3 years, we might ask her to do it. So we start thinking 2 years out, how can we get her ready so that she can build a high performance culture? Am I answering your question?
Yes, and a little bit of no, because high performance culture is a big word, and all the organization, they want high performance culture. So I'm just
Yeah,
trying to think as a tangible case. Can I use the case of maybe Starbucks so that
sure.
okay, without saying that this is about Starbucks in reality, okay?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Maybe the business driver of Starbucks is they're not selling coffee, they are selling experience, and they connect uh, people with people in their
Yes.
store. And a very important person in their store is barista. Barista is the one who knows your name, is the one who knows your coffee preference, is the one who greet you every morning. And he is or she is the one who understands you so much that if the whole organization have this barista uh, working
Yes.
efficiently in all the store, then those information will be feedback to the head office and understand how to address the consumer in a different way. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I'm using the comparison. What do we mean by business driver? Does in terms of that, is barista the business driver, and the way they communicate the data that they collect from the consumer to the head office
Yes.
is
Yes.
what? Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's good to be able to use an example. So let's take Starbucks. Over the years, a Starbucks espresso machine has changed a lot. It used to be when Starbucks first became popular, it used to be barista grinds the beans, puts the beans, tamps the beans, puts the filter in the machine, presses the button, waits, then and so on. Over the years, there's been more automation in that process. So now a barista does much less coffee coffee making and much more customer service. And let's ask, why would that be? I think it's because of what you said. There was a strategy to get the barista closer to the customer. That's a different business driver. We would say create a customer focused culture. So, what is going to be required to create a customer focused culture in Starbucks? That would require things like creating new processes, inventing new ways of thinking about the customer. I can measure skills that can enable someone's ability to create new process, to be able to communicate new process and get people to adopt a new process. I bet some baristas didn't like automation. I bet some baristas who were good with customers believed that the reason they were so good was because they were making great coffee and they don't trust a new machine. I want to make it myself. I want to be like a chef, but with coffee, right? And so I think that business situation, we might take another coffee company and they might say, the problem with Starbucks is their coffee doesn't taste good enough because they have machines that do it and the machines don't taste good. So I'm going to create a coffee company that has better tasting coffee, different process. Now the question is that now you might say that now a different business driver, shape organizational strategy. What is our strategy for creating better tasting coffee? And now I can measure the skills. How do you shape a strategy? What organizational assets do we have? What markets do we want to go into? How much capital do we have to spend to do it? Where are we present? Where are we not present? Now we start putting together all of the variables that someone can begin to learn to know what does it take to shape a strategy. And some people are creative, they're very good at it, they're very entrepreneurial, they're very aggressive about business building. They might be better in that situation than someone who would cultivate a customer focused strategy in an organization like Starbucks, where all the assets already exist. It's a matter of creating change inside an organization. How are we doing now? Is that helping to get at it?
Oh yes, thank you very much, Matt. That is much more. That's very clear now. That okay.
Okay.
It depends on the business driver. If the business driver is about consumer experience, about customers experience, then you have to have like uh, someone to listen to the consumer and understand them. But if another company of coffee say, okay, but for Starbucks, their coffee might not be the best coffee, but it's not bad and it's consistent, right?
Exactly.
But because they focus on experience.
That's right.
But another coffee company want to aim for the best coffee ever after, then their business driver might have to do with partnership with the supplier, which is the
Yes.
first understand the process and bring out the best of that process and even tell story of those farmers.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Now I can see that with these two organizations, the organization structure and even who is in the board are different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now imagine this. Now, let's say you have um, business drivers. Let's say you have three. Now imagine a matrix, three columns with business drivers. Okay. And then the rows are people. And you say, so if the rows are people, maybe all the senior team members, and you say, who is good at cultivating a customer focused culture? Who is good at shaping organizational strategy? Who is good at uh, creating a high performance culture, or whatever they are? Um, what starts to happen is we look at groups of people together and we can see patterns of strength, weakness, opportunity for growth. And it begins to cause us to say, how do we need to make changes in our capability in general? Do we need more senior team members? Do we need board members? Do we need people below the senior team who can help us close gaps that we have? And very often, we see organizations over time. Boards tend not to change very quickly, and I think that's good in most cases. But sometimes boards will say, we need to add a board seat. We need to add a director because we need someone. Take digital savvy. Many boards added people who have digital savvy because they needed to augment that. And I think that's almost when thinking about experience, knowledge, competencies, personal attributes, that's a lot of experience and knowledge that you're going to find on the board. And that's great. When you get into the senior team and the CEO, that's where you need the skill to do it. You need people who can actually go do it. Board members need to advise, be able to identify risk, react to strategies, be able to steer from a distance. Yes, you agree? Leaders in the organization, have to lead, have to move people, move large groups of people quickly in different directions. So I think many boards look inward when they look at their business drivers. Once they've identified their business drivers, that's like having a strategy, but just a strategy for leadership. Not a strategy for everything in the company, just for leadership, and saying, this is what we are trying to do in leadership. Because if I have a matrix with business drivers and people, and in each of those boxes, I have red, yellow, green. How good are we? Are we ready? Are we not ready? Are we good? Are we not good? Are we better than benchmark? Are we not better? Because if we have a whole column that is red, we have to change that. And that's a strategy. That's a leadership strategy that we can go change. We don't have people who can create a customer-focused culture. We have to either go find them, or we have to develop the people that we have, but we must change it. And that's what we see boards key in on, because they are then able to help a senior team make decisions in that regard.
Sounds very good. It sounds to me like the structure of the whole organization from bottom to even the boardroom has to mirror the business driver. And that's why I just realized, because I'm at board of directors geek. I like to read annual report of big companies. Starbucks has board of directors from JC Penney, from Nike, from Lego, from Domino Pizza, even from Apple in China. But the only skill that I could not find in those boards are coffee expertise.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Because they don't. They prefer, you give that two good example. One, which is Starbucks, is about customer experience, because they are not aiming to be the best coffee.
No, it just has to be good enough. Good enough
Exactly.
to bring people in, and then the experience brings them back, right?
Exactly.
And
yes.
And so they don't need a coffee expert in the boardroom. Yeah. That's such a good insight. And what we find is that most organizations don't think about leadership in this way. Go back to the very beginning of our conversation this morning. We said most boards think about succession as replacement. Someone leaves, find someone to put in their place. That is decision making that leaves all the risk unmanaged. All the risk is before that. All the risk has taken place. Let me say it differently. The opportunity to manage risk has passed you by the time you get to having to make a decision about someone. Now you're going to have to live with whatever happens. You either get lucky and you get the right person and you happen to have someone who's ready, or you don't. And 47% of the time, you don't. It's almost like flipping a coin. And so in our view, by the way, identifying business drivers, not difficult, not complicated. People quickly come to agreement about what the most important leadership variables are. We don't find organizations struggling to identify their business drivers unless they never talk about it. I'll have an example. I was in Canada a number of years ago with a retail company, very large retail company, struggling with customer service, having a very difficult time. This organization has 200,000 employees, very big organization. And we went to the board of directors to identify their business drivers. 12 board members. And when we identified their business drivers, we gave them a deck of cards with 30 business drivers. So, and we took 12 people, broke them into 4 teams of 3. Each team got one deck of 30, the same deck, 30 business drivers. And we said, you can only pick 3. Pick the 3 business drivers that you think are most important for this organization now and in the near future. And we gave them 30 minutes. Each team of 3 sorted out the deck, and they got rid of the ones they didn't think were important, and they kept the ones. And I said, okay, you got 3 minutes left, and they made their decisions. And I said, show your cards. Guess how many different business drivers we had? 12. 4 teams, 3 business drivers each. Each team had totally different business drivers. And then they said, oh no, we don't agree on this at all. We have, they panicked. They were very nervous. They were very upset. They thought this must be an enormous problem. I said, okay, hold on, time out. That's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's have every team talk about why they chose the business drivers that they chose. And each team went around, and all of a sudden we started to learn with each conversation that they were using very similar language about what the challenges are and what they think is important, but they chose different words to describe it. So in a 1-hour conversation, we ended up with 4 business drivers. Unanimous decision, no argument, 1 hour. And that's having started with 12 different business drivers. And it's because a simple conversation about it enabled us to say, oh, that's what we mean. We don't want to build a high performance culture. We're doing that already. What we actually mean by that is shape organizational strategy, or so, that's the way the conversation was. And I use the example because most organizations don't take the time to do it. They don't take the time to stop and say, let's assess our context. Because where this started, Kunkulvek, is you said you assess the person, but how do you assess the context? Some organizations don't assess either one. Some organizations only assess the person. The best organizations assess them both. And I think you've started to highlight that for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. For the audience, please, if you have any questions, please give it to type it, and then I'll make sure that it's been asked. But coming back to this, we use the example of the cup of Starbucks. Now let's use the example of a business that are highly regulated and got disrupted, and it's a challenge. Banking business.
Yes.
The way they were built was on compliance, on lots of layers, and one day all this digital banking come, and even my daughter said, "Why do I have to have a bank account?"
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Right. Good question.
So, yeah. If you look at that, and that the bank has to do something, because otherwise banking will survive, but the bank might not survive.
Right. Yes.
With that, but at the same time, all this regulation all these thing, all layers of compliance is that it's like uh, I want to move fast, but I it has to be proper moving too. How do you
Right.
get uh, if there is a business driver which is about be the solution, financial solution of the consumer, then how do you get the organization structure or even the board of directors to mirror that?
Very good question. Um, shall I talk in terms of business drivers now? Because what you're talking about is different business drivers. These are different areas of leadership focus. So, for example, um, we have a business driver that's called create new profitable growth. So this is a very unique skill set. This is someone who can look at an existing business, see how it exists, and find ways to create value where there is none right now. Regulated industries are classic examples of where they need people who can do this. And it's also often true that the people who are the most well-known leaders do not have those skills. However, there are often people in the organization who do have those skills, who are clever thinkers, who are interested in doing things differently, who have ideas that perhaps no one thought of before. So in the US, for example, one of the things that the regulated industries have learned how to do is create investment portfolios in renewable energies. And by the way, this might sound strange, but perhaps they're doing it in Thailand as well. But they invest in research companies that are researching renewable energies. And as these companies begin to have small wins, their investment portfolio begins to grow. They build a nest of investment money that they can then use to conduct their own experiments, which then creates their shareholder value that increases, which they invest back into the investment into a market. So it's an entirely separate revenue stream that has nothing to do with their regulated industry, except that they're investing in adjacent research and technology. That is something that a few organizations, only a few, have figured out how to do, and it has fundamentally changed their position in the US regulated market. They're still regulated in all the same ways, but because they understand, learn about, and are part of the innovation and investment engine, they're able to influence regulators in ways that other organizations are not. And so it if you go upstream from that and go backwards and say, how do you enable that? A board of directors has to sit down and say, we want to find people who have that skill. That means we have to look a little bit deeper in the organization, and we have to find ways to give those people experiences so that in a healthy way, they can grow in the organization. Now, that doesn't mean you go to your senior team and you wipe it out and you hire all new people. That never works in any industry. But what you can do is grow people much faster than you think you can. Much faster than you think you can, especially if you have a good assessment of their skills and personality. So that's a one reaction to that. Does it answer your question, and does it cause you to think of anything else?
Yes, it did, and okay, the highly regulated business like banking, if I were to imagine, they are a mothership, a very large one, and everything
Yes.
has its own mechanism that is well made.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
they have to get the future leader to be in the speedboat, exploring the opportunity. Don't
Yes,
sit on the ship because this is the present and the past.
that's
Please
right.
go, right? So that's what you're saying.
You've just described one business strategy. That's a way of doing it. Instead of trying to reshape the mothership, we create small boats that sail alongside the mothership, right? And that's a business that's one strategy. Many organizations do it. I think when you look at the largest financial institutions in the world, most of them do it in one way or another, right? They diversify. And just like your own investment portfolio, it's healthier when it's more diverse. So same is true with leadership. The more diverse leadership we have, the more healthy we are as an organization, particularly if we're going to try to do things like what you're describing, go into different markets. So we're getting toward the top of the hour, aren't we?
Yeah,
We just have a couple of minutes left.
and I think we have to stop soon. But I just
Okay.
realized that we haven't touched upon the family business, which succession planning is very,
Yes.
very challenging, right?
Yes.
So is it that I invite you, I'll ask you to come back and talk
Of
about family?
course. Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'd be delighted. We have like I think perhaps you may have mentioned this last time we spoke. You mentioned an iceberg and how we really are only touching the tip of the iceberg, because what most boards do, truthfully, what most boards do is think about this topic only in the very smallest ways. They think about 2 or 3 critical positions: CEO, CFO, COO, and the board asks about those. And if they know the name of the person who can replace those jobs, all done. Except a healthy organization goes deeper, and it gets more complicated in a family organization. And we've had lots of experience in that space, and I'd be delighted to talk about it.
Thank you, Matt. Let me summarize what I learned from you, and please feel free to add if there's any. Succession planning is not a transaction, it's a process. It's an ongoing process, 24 hours, 24/7, right?
Yes.
Because succession planning has to mirror the business driver or the differentiation, the secret sauce of your organization. We use the example of Starbucks. Their secret sauce is how barista engage the consumer. Coffee is just a tool, right?
That's it. Exactly.
You have to really understand your secret sauce first, and then get the whole supply chain of leadership to understand that secret sauce and get them to kind of taste the sauce. And in future, they'll come up with a better secret sauce.
Wonderful, wonderful analogy. Very well said, and a very good summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Matt. Talk to you soon. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before we end, I would like to thank the Kun Matthew Paese. Shall I call you doctor also?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, so sorry, I did not call you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No.
And I would like to thank everyone for watching this, and all the IOD members that show your strong interest in learning more and more about the future of our business. Thanks to Indorama Venture Public Company Limited for supporting the activities. Our next activities are Board of Directors briefing, PDPA in soft action for board and management on April the 22nd from 10 to 11 a.m. So for now, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.